Imagine walking down a first-century Roman street. You pass a local merchant, and right beside him, an off-duty legionary. If you only looked at their basic clothing, you wouldn't be able to tell them apart. Both wore the same simple woolen tunic. The Roman state didn't issue identical mass-produced textile uniforms to project its authority. Identifying an agent of state violence in a crowded marketplace required a completely different visual marker. This diagram displays the sheer volume of a legionary's combat kit: a heavy marching pack, massive curved shield, spear, short sword, and broad dagger. Carrying this securely creates a severe logistical problem. The gear had to stay organized without tangling or bouncing. Rome solved this burden by engineering a complex, wearable suspension system. A generic leather strap would fail. This was a precise piece of load-bearing architecture that broadcasted military identity to anyone who saw it. In the early empire, legionaries managed this heavy load using a two-belt system. We see exactly how this worked on surviving funerary monuments. Soldiers wore these belts overlapping at the waist. They arranged the system so the main sidearm, the gladius, hung on one side, while the dagger, or Pugio, sat securely on the other. The Pugio lacked the profile of a standard utility knife used for cutting rope. Look at this rusted blade. It is broad, double-edged, and built for desperate close-quarters emergencies, when a soldier lost his sword or ended up trapped. Safely securing a highly lethal sidearm directly against the body required mechanical innovations. The Roman military took a simple leather band and turned it into the structural foundation of a soldier's readiness. This schematic illustrates Roman equipment zones. The sword sat on the right, the dagger on the left, creating uncrossed draw paths. Strict zoning kept the waist clear, allowing a soldier to lock shields, dig, or chop wood without snagging his sidearms. Suspending a heavy metal scabbard from a plain piece of leather creates a physics problem. The weight of the dagger pulls downward, causing standard leather to twist, roll, and eventually tear under the strain. Roman armorers solved this by riveting thick metal plates straight through the leather. These plates provided massive rigidity, distributing the heavy weight of the sidearms evenly across the entire waistline. Specialized suspension frogs and metal scabbard fittings anchored the dagger flush against the body. This tight connection prevented the blade from swinging violently or bruising the soldier's hip during a 20-mile march. The leather belts themselves rotted away centuries ago. These corroded bronze buckles, hinges, and plates are the hard physical evidence archaeologists use to reconstruct the entire suspension system today. The dagger belt functioned as a piece of wearable load-bearing architecture. Every hinge and plate was mechanically designed to secure lethal tools under the extreme physical strain of a moving army. This engineering also produced a distinct visual effect. Suspending the sword and the dagger on opposing sides created a perfectly balanced, symmetrical silhouette. Attached to the front of this suspension system was the belt apron, a series of heavy leather strips hanging directly down the center of the groin. A common myth suggests these dangling strips acted as protective armor. In reality, a few strips of decorated leather offered no reliable defense against a spear thrust or a heavy sword strike. The apron operated as an audio-visual amplifier. Loaded with heavy metal terminals and studs, the strips flashed aggressively in the sunlight and produced a loud, rhythmic clinking sound with every single step the soldier took. These plates, studs, and aprons varied heavily by region, time period, and personal wealth, giving individual soldiers a way to display their status and battlefield success within the rigid framework of the military. The combination of rigid physical symmetry, gleaming metallic shine, and synchronized marching noise deliberately erased the soft civilian profile. It gave the Roman waistline a hard, unmistakable military presence. A thrown spear is an impersonal weapon of distance. A heavy shield is a tool for the formation line, but a dagger represents desperate, intimate violence. It is the absolute last line of defense in close quarters. Yet the Roman army placed this brutal survival tool into highly decorated, visually arresting scabbards. Look at the intricate, inlaid geometric patterns surviving on this metal sheath. Hanging this ornate casing from a metal-plated belt turned the weapon's inherent danger into a professional identity. It took a tool of extreme personal violence and displayed it as a badge of status. This exact arrangement was so deeply tied to a soldier's personal identity that veterans routinely paid to have the belt, the apron, and the suspended dagger carved into their own tombstones. Elevating the Pugio through such a complex, customized suspension system proved that Roman military discipline governed the smallest, most intimate objects worn on the body, not simply massive formations. Scale this visual out from the individual soldier's body to the empire's vast network of stone-paved roads, border forts, and provincial towns. The general public living in those towns didn't need to understand the technical, load-bearing engineering of a leather weapon suspension system. They only needed to recognize the sensory output. When they saw the straight posture, the rigid metallic waist, and heard the rhythmic clinking of the apron, they immediately knew who was walking through their streets. This made the belt a tool of psychological control. It projected the constant, looming threat of Roman power at city gates and in crowded markets, long before a single blade was ever drawn from its scabbard. The Roman dagger belt served as a standardized, wearable system